Okay, welcome to this episode of Touchy Topics. I am here again with London Angel Winters. Welcome back, London.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
I think this is the soonest I've ever done a repeat interview with a guest, but London and I had so much fun on the last interview, and she dropped so many wisdom bombs and aha moments that I was like, I just want to have you back all the time, but especially now. And to talk about motherhood.
Yeah. I'm so happy to be here. Really happy.
Awesome. So, in case you missed the first episode, London Angel Winters coached us, James and I, around intimacy and relationship, and she teaches all around the yoga of intimacy. Her and her husband, Justin Patrick Pierce. She's also the mama to her little baby, Ava, who's 4 now.
Yeah, correct.
Yep. Cool. So today we're going to talk about how motherhood changed your practice, because you had already been on this path of devotional, sacred intimacy, sacred relating for over a decade, right?
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah, in fact, I don't know how many of your readers have read my first book, Awaken Woman's Guide to Everlasting Love, but the whole reason for that book was after my umpteenth miscarriage. And I was just like, okay, kids are not happening for me. And I'm not going to be at odds with this. I'm not going to spend my life thinking that there's something flawed about my life plan. And I'm going to accept this. And I'm going to ask myself, this is what my thinking was okay, I'm going to ask myself, what would it take that I do with my next chapter that would make it worth not being a mom? The gift of not being a mom is endless free time, right? Endless free time. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do with this time that would make this worth it? And I was like, I'm going to write a book. And that was the Awaken Woman's Guide to Everlasting Love. Can you believe that? And
I love that book too.
Justin and I worked on that book 24 hours a day for 365 days in a row, pretty much. And because we had the ability, we were just so free in our lives. We just dedicate ourselves. It was just this crazy spiritual sadhana we did. On the day that I turned it in, done, I's dotted, T's crossed, I found out I was pregnant.
No. Are you serious?
Is that freaking crazy? Yes.
That's insane.
Yes, I know.
How did you find out? Take us. Well, before, I just want to say, I love that book and I'm so glad you wrote it. I read it when I was first dating my now husband, and I think it really influenced our marriage and how I showed up inside of it. So highly recommend for anyone listening.
You never told me that. That's amazing.
I know.
Wow, I just totally had no idea. Okay. Wait, what did you ask me?
Yeah, I love that book. I asked you, okay, so you were when you found out you were pregnant, how did you find out? How did it feel?
Oh, how did I find out I was pregnant? Well, believe it or not, I was 47 years old at the time. So I really didn't think it was possible. And we also practice non-ejaculation practice. Justin was really trained and very good at that. So I also didn't think it was possible. And then I was kind of heading into what I thought was probably perimenopause age. And I actually bled through the whole beginning of this pregnancy, so much so that I had to get that underwear that you get. That's underwear, I think it's called Thinx.
Thinx?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Yeah. One of my really good friends was like, oh, you should get these Thinx. She was a big time yoga instructor. And so she used to wear these, and she was like, oh, you're going to love these. Cause I was every day just having all this random. And so I bought 5 pairs of them, if that tells you anything. And then it wasn't until I started feeling nauseated that I thought, wait a minute, there's no way that I'm pregnant, but why am I so nauseated? And I went and got 5 tests from the pharmacy, and all 5 came with like a
Wow.
strong, and having been through so many miscarriages, I had tests sometimes where it was like a light line, and then you're like, okay, this is kind of like a real maybe. No, these were like all in. Every 5 of them had like this big time line. And that was when we realized it. And that was the morning of like, I can't remember the
Wow.
exact moment, but it was truly freaking amazing.
That is unbelievable timing on so many levels. Like the first thing was that you were 47. I tell people that as such an inspiration because so many people don't think it's possible. Also, when James was reading your book and it said you were 51, he said, "Oh, there's a typo in their book." I was like, "What do you mean?" He said, "The book says she's 51, but there's no way she's 51." And if you look at her, like if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see her. But if you're listening to the podcast, watch it on YouTube. She does not look anywhere close to 51. Like I think we look the same age almost.
Oh, you
So
are way nice, way kind.
either that or you just have really good lighting, but I would say we're about the same age.
Oh my
So
God.
we thought it was a typo, but it's not. And so you got pregnant at 47 with this little miracle baby
Yep.
on the day that your book went to publishing.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, and the book that says I'm 51 is our next book, Playing with Fire, which I clearly wrote during those first 4 years. Yeah, so that's a whole nother story. Like if
Yeah.
anyone thinks motherhood ends all your dreams, it's just not true. It adds to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Wow.
all crazy. It's all, the other crazy piece about this is that Justin and I, if you've seen us teach, we both are darker looking people, like dark eyes, dark hair, dark skin. And our daughter is blonde, blue-eyed, fair, like white, milky white skin. Like I
What?
actually, yeah, like when she was born, I was like, how do you even take care of this skin? Like, but
Wow.
you get used to learning how to like deal with your own skin and the sun and all these things, and she's a complete, she doesn't look anything like either one of us. And,
Wow.
and I had her at home, so I know she's ours, but she is like not even remotely like us. She's a true miracle.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so you're pregnant. How was your pregnancy? Did it go well?
To be honest with you, my pregnancy was very tough for me, not because of I didn't have like, my pregnancy was perfect, which was also a miracle. None of the doctors could believe it. Like every single thing just went absolutely perfect. But what was tough for me was after so many losses, including some really, really crushing ones, like late term. One time I had a problem and my milk came in.
Oh,
I mean, yeah, just absolutely soul crushing stuff had happened to me. And it was hard to have a fun pregnancy because when you've had some terrible things happen, especially pretty far down the road, it took all of my sexual yoga practice to keep surrendering into the unknown and not expect the worst. It wasn't like I had the naivete of planning the nursery. Like, it was terrifying. And that was a real spiritual sadhana for me of just absolutely surrendering to every day and getting out of the way. Because the other thing is I didn't want to put that stress into her.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. How was yours?
Yeah. My pregnancy was challenging in the first trimester. I threw up every day.
Oh,
Um, yeah. So the nausea was really intense. Um, I didn't, but when I hear about yours and I think about the miscarriage and, um, yeah, it makes me think how much surrender there is in the whole pregnancy journey. It's like, it's something that it's in our bodies and it's part of our bodies we can't control. And I really felt that when I was nauseous. I was like, I was like trying crackers and protein and eating nothing and eating everything. and I could not control, like, every day I was just thrown up and thrown up. And yeah, I think pregnancy was a big initiation for me on surrender. And then
Yes.
there was birth, which was an even bigger portal on surrender. And you had a home birth too.
You had a home birth?
I did, yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yes, I did a home birth. I found like the one person in the land that was willing to do a first time mom home birth at 48 years old. Because at that time I was 48. And
How did it
yeah.
go?
Well, she approved it because she sent me to her trusty doctor, and he said if she can get pregnant naturally at 47, she can give birth at 48. He's like, I trust her body.
Doctor.
I know. He said, I trust her body. And I was like, thank you. And, there were parts that I didn't take into account, because I have two sides of me. Like one side is a life of dedicated sexual yogini work, right? Where I'm softening into rippling pleasures and all these things. But don't forget, I'm also a previously champion bodybuilder.
Oh, another former life I did not know about.
Yeah, like I was full on competitive fitness chick who I was squatting like 125 pounds, like no problem. And the way you do that is you build an iron core. And so didn't realize quite what was going to happen to me in birth. Does it make sense? I don't want to say too much because if anyone hasn't given birth yet, there's like a code.
I know there is a code.
There's a code. So we'll leave it at that. But let's just put it this way. I did not have an ecstatic birth. I mean?
No.
Everybody was like, because, I was really well known at that point, and everybody was like, oh, you're going to have an ecstatic birth and it's going to be this and it's going to be that. And let's put it this way. Not even remotely.
Oh, no. Oh, shoot. Birth is so surprising. I think. I mean, I went into birth with this like naive confidence of like, I'm strong, I'm capable, like I feel really fit in my body. I'm just gonna rock this. How hard can it be? Billions of women birth, how hard can it be? Wrong. It is by far the hardest thing I have ever done in my entire life. I can do it. I'm grateful. There were no complications, but it required way deeper parts of me than I thought existed. There was like strength I didn't know I had, reserves. It was like a faith and surrender. Like there was, not to be too intense, but there was one moment I was like, all right, God, if I'm going to die, so be it, but I can't do any more on my own. So this one's on you. And it was fine. It was just like when she was literally coming through the birth canal and I felt like my hips were breaking apart. But luckily she's good. I'm good. But yeah, what an initiation.
Yeah. Do you know, I went through 24 hours of labor. Like I'm talking contractions every 4 minutes for 24 hours. Not like, not like, you get a break labor, like constant contraction labor for like 24 hours. And at one point the midwife said, okay, now it's time to push. And this is about 4 hours usually. And I went, wait, what? I was like, 4 more hours, like just think of the sleep deprivation alone. Like you haven't gone to sleep for 24 hours, And she goes, it's time to push. And I just looked at Justin, my husband, and I was like, oh, heck no. And, that's when I accessed that champion bodybuilder in me. And I pushed it out in one push. They almost didn't get it. It was a cannonball. I literally was like, yeah, I literally just will. I was just like, I'm okay. Now I'm bringing it, and I was like, screw surrender. Here's some will. One push.
That's amazing.
The midwife was literally like, like had to grab her And the next day, all the family comes to the house to like see the baby, right? And I looked like I had every single blood vessel in my eyes had broken, so that I had like, there was no white, it was all red.
Oh,
And
jeez.
Justin has younger brothers, and one of them's like way younger. And I remember he walked in the door and he took one look at me and he was like, wait a minute, what happens in child?
He's like, oh my gosh, my sister-in-law is a demon.
Yes. And I'm over there like eating my placenta, it's just crazy.
You want some?
That's
Some
like
raw
something that a younger guy just doesn't need to be around.
Just
like,
freak the heck out of him.
I'm really sorry for your future girlfriend. You know what I mean? Like,
or you're welcome,
or you're welcome. Yeah,
more
maybe.
prepared.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, birth. I'm kind of glad I went in with a little bit of ignorance. I feel like trepidation now thinking about a future baby because I know how hard it is. It's like going to war.
It kind of is going to war. Well, and you really, the thing I loved about birth, the thing I truly loved is I genuinely had the experience of going to the gates of life and death and getting her. I mean, I actually experienced that. And it was one of the most profound, spiritually awakening experiences of my life, because I kind of understood life differently. Meaning, I learned how to die by learning how to give her life. And it sounds like you had the same. I truly had the experience of standing there. And it taught me a lot that I know one day I will access, of how to be in that ultimately most intense moment when you truly do feel at those gates and relax. And then, I don't know about you, but ever since then, I mean, in the end, when we get deep into the depths of sexual yoga, those are the places we're accessing with our partner. And so Justin and I were already getting close to those places, but after my birth, I mean, people are so afraid that like your birth will ruin you sexually. My birth launched me sexually. Like from a esoteric point of view, I mean, I was never the same in the most ecstatic way. I mean, it tore me up. I'm not saying this happened like the week after, but you know what I'm saying? Like, it was really super profound for me as a sexual yogini.
Wow. Yes. I can't wait to talk about that. I just say I can relate, like that moment being at the gates of life and death. And my eyes got all teary eyed when you said that. And I think like I had this distinct moment in my birth of like a light coming through a cave, and it was like calling the soul down to earth. I was like, okay, it's time. It was the most priestess empowered moment of my life. But I only got there by that moment of being like, okay, God, if I'm going to live, it's on you. If I'm going to die, it's on you. And I'm open. So I'd love to just talk about that in relationship to sexuality and how you see the two relating.
Ooh, such a great, rich question. It's okay if I drop in for a second to.
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the reasons a lot of women come to sexual yoga or sexual spiritual pursuits of every kind, there's so many beautiful ones out there, right, is to experience full body orgasm, right? I hear that all the time from people who are new, like, what's this unicorn I've never seen, that I want to ride. And really knowing yourself in full total. So, I mean, the full body orgasm represents that complete and total full surrender, right? Correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No matter, what part lineage, no matter what practice you're doing, like wouldn't you agree that's like a common thing across all the different modalities that exist?
Right.
Yeah.
Totally. I agree.
Well, one of the things I'm constantly teaching is that while that, when you hear it said in like a podcast or a teacher says it, or you read it in a book, it has this aspirational thing like, oh my God, that's all dessert. I want to taste that nectar, that dessert. But when you're a practitioner and you're experiencing those things, you realize that it's not all good, meaning it involves the complete and total decision to participate in the annihilation of self. The only way you could really go there is to agree to the annihilation of self. Are you with me?
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah.
And there's, no matter how like juicy and exciting it is, every time you stand at the gates of that decision when you're in a profoundly amazing sexual moment, because just on the other side of those gates is also really good. Like you can ride really good and love that. You know what I mean? You could have like a great clitoral orgasm. You could have a great G-spot orgasm. You could have like great sexual energy coursing between the two of you. But to have that utter and complete loss of the mind and your body to begin doing things that are almost like beyond you, like you've given yourself to something you're no longer in control of, that requires the annihilation of self. And in one lineage of these practices, what's called the left hand side of these practices, there's a teaching that there's only one thing any human really fears, and that's the total annihilation of self. And by self, of course, they mean with a small s. It's so clear when we're saying this how it's similar, right? Because when you said, like you said to God, like, okay, whatever you want from me, I'm here. You agreed to a potential annihilation of self. And when you have those revelatory sexual experiences, you really do, you're not the same after. Some part of you, some deluded part of you will die. And yes, you'll experience absolute liberation on the other side. But the part of you that is deluded doesn't want to give up. That part's going, I mean, it can be so simple as that part going, if you're more a beginner, that part can be going, well, if you go there, you might fart. And then what would he think?
Yeah, I remember that fear.
Or like I was doing my Patreon women's call the last week, and a woman brought the issue. I talk about it a lot, and she brought it up as a real issue with her of potty training. And she had a very shaming experience at 3 and 4 years old from losing control over her bowels, right? Well, guess what a full body orgasm is? A loss of control over your bowels. So you're going to, quote unquote, remember trauma that's precognitive, like before you even really, yeah. So there's just all of these aspects to sexual play that are so similar to birth. And there's so much about birth that can teach you so much about sexual play. Just a quick side note, even those first newborn months taught me so much about sexual play, because I watched a being with absolutely no constriction cry. There's this, one of my really close friends was involved deeply through her family in primal scream therapy. And one of the things she used to always say that her father would say is that when an infant cries, they don't lose their voice, right? But when an adult like really like goes there. They lose their voice. The difference between an infant and an adult is the infant's not adding any tension at all. So as we all know from a colic baby, you know, they could cry for 6 hours. They don't even remotely lose their voice because they're absolutely surrendered into the feeling. And I learned so much about that from just being in her presence. So, you know, it's funny how
Wow.
we think of motherhood as nothing to do with sex, but it can be everything to do with it.
That's beautiful. I love the way that you kind of wrap together the light and the dark. And it's like the light, like, oh yeah, full body orgasms, ecstatic pleasure. And I think so many people are like, yeah, that sounds good. I want that. But then you put the caveat of like, oh yeah, but that requires annihilation of self and loss of control, including you might fart or look bad or make ugly sounds or be a mess or cry or scream. And how the two go together, but I think it's not talked about very often, this annihilation of self.
100%. And then, you know, with no distinction on that, with no understanding of that, it's so sad because a woman might come to those gates, not know what she's experiencing. All she can think of is, I don't want to fart. Have no idea then why the full body orgasm is so elusive, and then think there's something wrong with her. You know, that's one thing that's so beautiful about all these sexual modalities that are becoming available to us is we can take ourselves off the hook. You know, like, oh, I'm not numb, I'm not frigid, I'm not like less than my girlfriend who can do that. I'm just working with the annihilation of self piece in a big way. And that makes sense because the last time I lost control over my lower parts, I got put in the dunce chair. And I was told, get it together because you just made a mess and I don't want to clean your sheets. How many kids, you know, back in those days, like the parents, you know, taught them potty training by not changing the sheets in their bed until the next morning so they could sleep in the wetness to learn the lesson. That was like a
that's
common
so horrible.
practice. That was a common practice. That was considered like benign because it was like, well, you just have to really teach them what the consequences are. Right?
Of losing control. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you wonder why there's so many women that don't want to go out of control, that are like tightly gripping the reins of, I have to maintain control.
Yes, it goes really back to potty training. It's profound. And actually, I was very cognizant of that when she hit potty training to give her positive messaging always. And you know what?
How did you do that?
I explained everything to her. You know, like, well, first of all, I had to really swallow the part of me that gets frustrated because it gets very frustrating, you know, like,
yeah, I
when
know
she
I'm in
learned,
it right now.
oh
That's
my
why.
God.
Tell me. Tell me the codes.
Oh, like, oh, okay. Let me drop in on this one because it's a big thing, right? Okay, let me drop in. Have you heard, okay, this is teeny little digression, but it's going to give you the basis of my entire approach. Is that okay if I just, little side note? One of the best things I ever heard as a mom, like in parenthood training, not a mom or dad, but parent, was that positive discipline, you know, this thing, positive discipline that's so successful, really starts when the parent recognizes that most of the time they're doing something that you don't want them to be doing. There has been a lack of instruction. And you forget that things you take for granted to know how to do, they don't. Like simple things, you know, maybe whatever. I won't try and give an example.
Hitting a kid. Hitting another kid.
Right. Like a good example of this is it's not just about, hey, when you're feeling those feelings, we don't take them out on someone else. That would be skipping about 5 things they would need to know to be able to do that. Hey, the first thing we do is we notice that we're feeling uncomfortable feelings. Can you feel yourself notice? Yeah, mommy, I can. Oh, good. Now you have the awareness that you're upset. Next, we figure out what we want to do with that. I feel like I want to show them. Oh, okay, that's a great impulse. But maybe showing them with your body might cause hurt, right? Is there another way you could show them? Right? I don't have it. Oh, then maybe you could step away until you can think of another way. Like there's like 5 things that would lead up to them not hitting that we assume they would just get, but they don't get because they are brand new. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, this is perfect timing because Lila just hit a baby this morning.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm listening, I'm watching, I'm like, how did I respond in that moment? And to be honest, I didn't know how to respond because I felt embarrassed. I was like, I don't want to have a bully for a child. But she hit this child like 3 or 4 times. So it wasn't just a one-off thing. So it took her out of the situation. But I'm having a light bulb moment as you talk about the steps of like, and it goes to your book, right? First being aware, feeling your feelings, awareness, sensitivity, being okay with those feelings, equanimity, right? And these are like skills you're teaching from a little age.
Yeah. And then you could even take it into polarity because remember, in playing with fire, we distinguish omega as the one who immerses into the feeling, and alpha is the one who transcends it. So, for example, if you were to coach her into alpha, you would say, can you take a deep breath and rise above this moment? Or like whatever you would coach her into, like taking a deep breath and moving past that anger. But maybe, once there's like a bully on the playground, maybe it's time for her to feel her proper boundary. Now you could coach her into the omega, which is what I was saying, like, is there wisdom to the fact that you wanted to hit? Like, what were those feelings telling you? I don't like that they were da-da-da. I don't like the way he was touching me. Oh, well, you have every right not to like the way he's touching you, my love. But could we do something else with that feeling? Right? And then we're cultivating both alpha and omega in them so that sometimes they can transcend. Like when maybe it's when, because she'll hit that phase where it's when she doesn't get something she wants and there's feelings, that would be a great teaching in alpha. Like, well, sometimes we don't get what we want and we can learn how to breathe through that feeling. And other times, you're going to want her to be able to recognize discernment where there's a lot of really mean kids out there, and like being able to say like, no, I don't like that. And right, not having that no taken away from her because she's supposed to just breathe when someone's being a total jerk to her.
Right. You need both. Totally.
You need both, right? And so, I mean, honestly, you could apply playing with fire to parenting, and it's everything I'm going to say today.
Totally. I could really see that. Yeah.
So I gave that example of like, or that little teaching on positive discipline, because what you do is you step back and you have to, as a mom, think what would be the steps that would help her get to the place that we need her to be. Now, if you do that with potty training, like what would be the first step to potty, successful, would be like body awareness, right? I notice that I have to pee. And then praising awareness, sensitivity, like how urgent is it? Is it really urgent or is it just a little bit? And learning how to start making her way towards the potty when it's a little bit. Because, what you'll notice in her is that she waits until it's like now. And then she's like, Mom, I got to pee. And you're like, okay. And then, you know what I mean? Right. So like, if you start breaking the steps down, it really helps you see your child as wanting to do the right thing and not knowing how.
Right.
I've always looked at Ava like this. And as a result, she is, for being as, what do they call it? High spirited. She's very high spirited, but she has cooperation in spades. Right. And it's like, because I didn't have to kill her spirit to get her to cooperate. I just educated. And then, it really paid off. Yeah.
I love that. I love breaking it down to the steps. And I could see like the aspects of playing with fire apply to the kids and also us as parents, in those moments when she hits, looking at, oh, I'm aware that I'm feeling embarrassed. Right. That my kid might be a bully, even though she's not. But in this moment, I'm aware of that and feeling that embarrassment and then choosing, like taking a breath with it and choosing how to respond. And so these skills that we've been cultivating.
Even into the map to presence, because the other thing is I'm not just aware that I'm embarrassed, but I'm also seeing that I'm not in the present moment because all she did was hit once. But I'm going to, what if she's a bully? Oh my.
Right. Future tripping,
because when you start nominalizing your kid, like taking one behavior and making it a thing, and you say that kind of stuff to them, like, don't be a bully, right? You start teaching them the archetype and identifying them with it. And they're like so impressionable. I'm a bully. That's what I am. And I was really careful never to do that with Ava. I was always in the present moment. It's only what's right here, right now. And I learned that from that decade of doing that with Justin, which is I'm right here. I'm only right here. I'm responding to what's right here. I don't have the luxury of making this you always do this. You never do that. Like I never give myself permission to do that because my presence practice challenges me to just be in what's happening right here. And that's it, So I did that with Ava. It really paid off too.
That's great. Yeah. And I think it's so vulnerable in a way to be present. Like if we just take the example of being with your partner, right? There's so much justified righteousness and being like, you never do this, or you always do this. So to lay down that weapon is really, it takes something.
It makes you feel alone. It does. It makes you feel alone because when we're doing the always never, we're speaking the tune of our childhood self that did experience it as always never. And there's something so comforting about saying to your partner, like, you never help me. And your childhood self goes, finally, we're getting a voice, And if you just say like, I don't feel helped right now, there's like this massive sigh of disappointment in the wound, not getting entertained. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you have to become comfortable with like kind of holding your childhood wound by yourself. And that's why I do so much intermarriage practice. I mean, I don't know if you realize I am constantly doing alpha and omega work with myself because I don't want to feel like I don't want to leave her feeling alone. So I'll go in the mirror and I'll do the I see, I feel with myself because it's like, if I'm not going to run that shit on Justin, I'm also not going to like suffer it. I'm going to work with myself on that one. You know what I mean?
That's like, a nice nuance to the mainstream teaching, which is just like, don't use those words. Don't say never and always, but it negates that there's actually a need that those words are speaking to, right?
Yes.
That there's like an inner child that needs to be seen and witnessed and felt and
and not kicked to the curb, because what happens is you become so fragmented and then your practice suffers, right? When we get fragmented into like, pretending to be more spiritually mature than we are, it gets thinner and thinner and thinner. And then, playing with fire is a story of desire disappearing from your body. And you have all these tools and you're like, where's the fire? Well, it comes from bypasses like that. Like you learned that you're not supposed to say always never. It makes a lot of sense. You begin doing it and you wonder why the whole thing fucking backfires on you.
Mm. Interesting. Okay, let's talk about this some more. When you say you get fragmented, what does that mean? How would someone know if they're getting fragmented?
They they don't feel like arousal very often. They pretend polarity practice, like they're in polarity practices. It just doesn't feel that great. Like they're doing all the right things, but it's not causing the feelings it used to. They maybe don't want to practice anymore, or like they want to practice less. They sort of lose interest. Or they, there's two kinds of personalities. One implodes, and that's what I was just describing. The other explodes. Like they suddenly just, like every little thing he does bugs me. Or I'm just suddenly repulsed. Like I used to be really attracted to him, and now I can't even fucking stand his smell. He always has that garlic breath, like you just feel yourself like effing repulsed,
Mm-hmm.
that feeling like, and you think like, God, 1 year ago, I was like, thought this was the hottest man on the planet. What happened to me? You got fragmented. Right.
Okay. So imagine a woman listening to this, like, all right, I feel that either I'm an imploder or an exploder, but either way, I'm realizing I'm fragmented. What would she do? And what is it? I in a sense, fragmented means like you've pushed away parts of yourself. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
What would she do to get it back?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, she would sit in front of the mirror for 10 minutes every day, and she would do I see, I feel, which, by the way, we describe in the book. So if you don't know that practice, it's in Playing with Fire, described in detail. But what I see, I feel represents is that intermarriage between your alpha and your omega, or traditionally like your divine masculine, your divine feminine. And what you would learn how to do is bring the seeing part of you in harmony with the feeling part of you.
Mm-hmm.
And where motherhood is such a great teacher to a sexual yogini is so much of our feeler comes from those first 5 years imprinted in our being. And so if you are being harsh with the part of you that wants to say, you never, you're slowly punishing your feeler, and your feeler is going to tiptoe right backwards. Like you're just not going to be willing to bloom. And guess what? This isn't just women. This is men too.
Yeah.
And anyone who knows my work knows that one of my foundational teachings, this, is that your no gives you your yes. When you deny yourself your no, or like the inconvenient parts of you, you lose your yes. And so how do we honor the wisdom that that's not good stuff to bring into intimacy, but not get fragmented? We do a lot of our own work. We make a lot of room for our messy parts.
I love that. Gosh,
and then,
just that nugget.
And then you start doing that. I was doing years of this, right? Makes it so much easier for us to be with the messy parts of our kiddos.
Yeah.
Because you know what sucks is having your kiddo be messier than you. And you're just like, I don't even know how to begin to accept this, because it's going to challenge every part that you disowned. What are you going to disown your kid? It gets so hard. So hard.
Totally. I felt
it's
that
such a challenge.
I felt that so acutely in becoming a mom of like, oh my gosh, anything I'm rejecting inside of myself, I'm going to just start rejecting her. And then that's how those lineages of patterns get passed down.
100%. And you know what's so frustrating about the whole thing is, as a mom, you're so tired and you're so stretched, and you're in the biggest spiritual sadhana of your life.
Yeah.
I was like, just when you have like no capacity for your own spiritual process, it gets put on steroids,
Mm-hmm.
And I think
Yeah.
every mom has to come to a reckoning with that. And the way I did it is I was also 48 years old, 49, 50, and I had kind of done everything I wanted to do with my life. And for me, most of my life has been doing deep, hardcore spiritual journeying, like hardcore, like turn over every rock, look in every dark corner, do it all, and work with the toughest teachers, the ones that will like annihilate you with a single awful comment. And I
I'm
thought
so curious about your teachers.
I thought that I had like shown up to the plate. And then Ava, beautiful, sweet, amazing Ava, showed me everything I didn't even know to look at. Like I couldn't go seek a mentor for this thing because I didn't even know it was there. And you know what she did? Pointed it out promptly. But
Yeah.
I took it on as like a gift because how many people do you know who are looking for that great coach that will really change everything for them? Well, you can pretty much guarantee your kid is going to be that person if you let them. And they're going to turn over every rock you didn't even know to turn over, and every dark corner you didn't even know was there, And
Yeah.
yeah, and I've let Ava do this, and I have a lot of private clients that are pregnant, and we start the work the day they get pregnant because they're experiencing the day, being in their mom's belly. If they wake up to these pieces, they're all right there. And it's an incredible process if you really take it on. And I think when you take it, like when you choose it, it's less rough, because you're grateful for it.
Right. Right. You're like, I'm grateful that my child is my teacher. Like I signed up to grow through this art of mothering.
Yeah. And like when
I
you're
want
standing
to
in the
learn.
playground and they hit the kid and you're just like mortified, and like every part of you that, for example, I had like a modality in my family where if you do something wrong, you're just like a bad person. Like good people don't push boundaries. That was like the
Yeah.
So when Ava, oh, did I lose you?
Just for a second, but you're back.
Oh, okay. So like the vibe in my family was if you push boundaries, you're a bad person. Not like just that it's inconvenient, but like they would look at you like disappointed, like who are you? Like our family doesn't do that. And when Ava started pushing boundaries, because she's very high spirited, she doesn't just take what you say like as the word, she's super high spirited. She had a big personality. And when she started pushing boundaries, I immediately felt that response of like, oh, maybe you're not the person I thought you were. Like everything my parents did to me came through my body. And then I caught myself, like, again, you said like awareness, I was aware that I was having these thoughts and I was like, what are these thoughts? And then I got awakened to, oh my God, this was my experience being her age. And then I got to feel that in my body and the like rejection that I think is going to come if I push a boundary. And then I started to work with my relationship with, if my relationship was saying no to Justin. Does it make me a bad person? What makes me a good person? And so through liberating all of that, like you could just see it like a fence, like just chain links, just going like and falling down. Now, when Ava pushes boundaries, I don't have a single blip in my system. I'll be like, oh, you're testing that for yourself. I see, you don't have to take mommy's word for it, but let me know, let me let you know what the consequences will be and whether or not you want to face those. And I'm so relaxed because all of that gunk I really addressed, it just vaporized. And then ironically, or not so, she doesn't really push boundaries anymore because there wasn't a charge in the field.
Right. Right.
And then she, of
Wow.
course, picks the next thing I need to work on.
And it's ongoing.
And it's
It's amazing.
ongoing. And I'm also not getting any sleep. And I'm sexually
Yeah.
uniting with my man. And it's just like, oh
Yeah.
my God, it's crazy, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting. And like I love the conversation around breaking those links and those patterns. I think for me, one of the ones I've been working on in my mothering is there wasn't space for negative emotions growing up. So it was like you're unhappy, you're crying, you're mad, like go to your room and deal with it. And when you're happy, come out. So, or like if you're having a tantrum, we're just going to ignore it until it's done. Right. So that's some like intense imprinting around like not feeling or that it's not okay to feel. And I've been doing I did a lot of work before I got pregnant around making, opening space for my feelings, having it be safe to feel, yeah, embracing the rage and the grief. And so now when she's crying and she's upset, I notice I have a lot more patience. And I used to be afraid, like, what if my kid has a tantrum in public? It's not a big thing now. I'm like, I'll just crouch down next to her and I'm like, yeah, you're mad. I get that. It's okay to be mad. I'd be mad too, and I feel so proud of that. That I'm like, that's a link I'm breaking. And I can see that there's limits. Like if she's, keeps going on and on and on, then I'll hit capacity at a certain point. But it's a lot different than when I grew up. And I feel, yeah, it's a big thing.
That's so beautiful. That's such a great example. And um, you know, I want to be careful for people who aren't familiar with my work yet. Tell me if you could cut this out if it's not appropriate. But the IC practice can be such an ally to that moment because all you have to do is get on the floor and go, I see, nut, nut, nut. And you will see her face, and all you have to do is just imagine, like when you're having a tough moment when you're a kid, like what if somebody came down, got on your level and said, I see you're having a hard time, right? And
Yeah.
I mean, I have literally learned everything about my parenting from my practice with Justin. And I do that with Ava all the time, is because the whole thing of like, and there's limits and da 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 gets into like, is it right or is it wrong? And as moms, we can get so upside down in that. But there's always a good time to say, I see, right? So you get down and you say, I see you're having a really hard time and you can't control this moment, yourself in this moment. And then you could even, let's say it was being inappropriate and like it was interrupting a concert or something, you could say, why don't we take these feelings outside? Would that feel better to you? Because the thing is, kids don't want to have a tantrum in public either. Right? And then they understand there's nothing wrong with your feelings. Let's go find a place where this feels better for you. And how about I just scoop you up in my arms and I'll just take you out of here and you don't have to get it together, but we'll go somewhere where you feel better. And I left like full shopping carts in the store. Like, we had just done like a big shop, right? And the cart is like stacked, and she's having a tantrum and it's like not the right place for it to happen. And I would literally leave the cart and go outside.
Wow.
But it was beautiful because then we're in an appropriate environment where she can let it rip, and she knows that it wasn't about her feelings. It was just about, let's find a place where these feelings can really do what they want to do.
That's beautiful. I love that.
And I know you're super good at the IC practice. I highly recommend be her seer in your, it's so like polarizing to her, and not in a sexual way, obviously, but polarizing because now you're her alpha.
Yeah.
Yeah,
totally. And it feels great to be seen in your feelings with love.
With love and like, like space holding. So little tip.
Beautiful. Love that. I'm going to try that. Yeah. Okay, there's one more thing I want to get to before we run out of time,
Did
which
we
is
already run out of time? This is so fun.
almost, I know, it goes so fast. But I want to talk about sex after baby, intimacy and sex, because I hear from so many moms that they really struggle with intimacy after baby and really struggle with desire to be intimate with
Hmm.
their partner.
Hmm.
Um, yeah,
Hmm.
I don't really have a question. I know that's a big topic, but I'm just like, let's just open that can of worms and see where we go.
This is what you just did to me. You're like, we're almost out of time. And intimacy after sex. Oh my God. Like my brain is like overwhelmed with like 25 different ideas I want to go on. Okay. I need you to help me. I need you to help me because I'm like short circuiting over here with potential places to go with this. Do you think you could give me a specific, because that was always helpful, like maybe think of one client who brought you like this scenario,
Yep.
and that'll help me at least like target something.
Okay.
And then we
Great.
could, have like, we could make that a whole podcast because this is just so much to this, right? And
There's so much to it.
this is the unicorn. This is another unicorn in a way because women feel, I will say this because this is coming up and this is important, I think, is like there's so much sacrifice and service to motherhood that you just start to feel like the sexy bitch that you once were has like vacated the premises. And now you just have blueberry stains on your shirt and you're fucking tired. You know what I mean?
And you're leaking milk and you
You're
got baby
leaking
vomit on you. And you're like, don't touch me. I have been touched all day.
And then you make an effort one day to wear your nice dress and then you get blueberry stains on it. And you're like, this is why I always wear black.
Totally.
I'm not trying this again. Just like, you know what I mean? It's devastating. And it doesn't have to be like that. I promise. So any mom out there, it doesn't have to be like that. And if you can make the leap, what one feeds the other. So like one feeds the other. And I know you know this. So let's talk. Could you help me target?
Yes. Yes. Okay. So I'm thinking of a client and she had a baby. Her baby is like a year old or so. And she feels like she should be intimate with her partner. He wants to be intimate, but she's like, I'm so tired. I'd rather sleep. Or I've been breastfeeding all day long. I don't want you to touch my breasts. Or, she's like, the only time I get for myself is when the baby's down for a nap. And that's the time I have to shower and shave my legs. And like, I don't want to use that time for someone else. And so his demands start to feel like he's pulling on her. And it's just another person who needs something from her.
That's a great, great one. Women, raise your hand if you can relate to this.
Just imagining thousands of hands going up. Probably millions, actually.
I think my hand would be up too, because that's what I felt like. Okay. Is this someone that has an active sexual yoga practice or not?
Not before working with us.
Yeah. So that's going to be the number one thing is it's very hard to motivate towards sex for a woman if the sex is traditional, like everyday, what we refer to as like junk food sex. Like, there's a lot of room for junk food sex prior to baby because you get a lot of solo time and you can kind of like turn yourself on in 6 different ways. And like you go out with your girlfriends and you get all juiced up and then you bring that home and like you guys kind of fuck based with that, But when you have a baby and you're on that hook in such a major way, you lose interest in sexing that is let's call it unintentional, where there's not sacredness to it. where it doesn't transport you into like presence, and you're not feeling him do things that cause your body to be aroused, even if you're not in the mood. These are very important distinctions, because very few men will find themselves successful with a new mom unless they bring something to the table that causes arousal, and she can feel herself immediately transport into a whole different mode of being with his help. And then he becomes your greatest ally. So I was in that position. I was completely exhausted and completely stretched, and I breastfed for 1.5 years. And like, it was so depleting for me, especially at 49 years old. Like, I would lose all of my juju every time I showed up to the nursing moment or pumped, and I was truly devastatingly exhausted. And so that whole like happenstance sex was really not happening anymore, because I just wasn't into it. Let's call it happenstance sex. We just both find ourselves in the mood, let's fuck kind of stuff. So what Justin and I did is we established practice. Now, this happened right when Ava started like sleeping for extended periods of time, like more than 2 hours. And I was just so excited that like she was stringing hours together. And Justin came to me and said, I think we should set up formal practice, which I know you guys call love dates, right? Like, basically like, I think we should set up love dates. And I literally in that moment burst into tears and said to him, oh my God, Ava just started stringing hours together, and now you want me to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning to do a love date, And he was so sweet. He just said, just trust me, babe. Trust me on this. And I was, he really earns my trust. And I was like, I trust you. I'll give it a try, So we wake up and we meet for a sacred sexual practice, sacred sex being the key, where there's no outcome that's expected. It's going to start in becoming present with each other. It's going to start in breathing together. It's going to start meeting each other in the moment. He's going to take over my breath and really become my spine. He's going to really work his practice, and my body, if I'm willing to surrender, is going to start being like silly putty, and like being molded by it. We did one practice, and at the end of that practice, I was so fully penetrated, open to the divine, I couldn't even stand up. So he had to go get the baby when she cried. And I just laid there on the carpet and I thought, this is more nourishing than an extra 2 hours of sleep. This is like, I remember that I'm a hot, juicy, fully loaded babe again. And like I said, from all of the lessons of the birth, I was even hotter than I had been before. Like my vagina was more able to surrender. My body was more able to ripple. I was less afraid of the annihilation of self. I had learned from Ava how to show every emotion without hold back. I mean, I had learned how to make love from tiredness, which is, we would sit in front of each other. We would do an I see, I feel. And I would just say, I feel wrecked. And he would say, I see a mom that loves like no other. And I would say, I feel destroyed. I feel like there's no shred of me left. And he would say, I see my beautiful goddess. And then I would say, I'm like, 10 minutes in, I am so turned on and I am so met, by his presence. And like, I am so seen in like the part of me that's like not a mom, the part of me that's a lover, that's a maiden. I still feel my maiden fully alive at 52 years old because Justin sees her, and it got to the point where, and you can read about this in Playing with Fire, like you read about my morning practice, I got like outfits going, you know what I mean? Like I show up in full leathers, I show up in vinyl, I show up in fishnets. Like I got so into this morning practice and it became my sanctuary. It was like, this is the time I'm not a mom. This is the time I'm like a fuck machine, like this is the time that I get to be my naughty, greedy for love, like, and it's all about me. And I'm just going to be honest, like, I'm not going to try and tell women that they can get interested in sex from boring sex. Because once you've had sacred sex, everything else is like boring, like he's not all the way there. You can feel he's like masturbating in your hole. He's probably thinking about some porn he watched and he is, you guys both just end up doing whatever just to like get some needs met. But sacred sex, where there's like presence established and seeing and feeling and emoting and making love out of anything that's there. Because, what you feel as a mom is I can't generate it for something. Like I'm already generating so much. Like I can't generate another thing here. But in sacred sex, you don't have to. You surrender, you relax, you immerse into what's here. You're honest. You're revealed. And then when you're fully made love to there, you're put, like I used to say to Justin, like you just put Humpty Dumpty right back together. And then the other thing that was beautiful, if I haven't run on, is it okay if I say one more thing?
Yeah.
The other thing that was so magical about this, and we described this in detail in Playing with Fire, so you don't have to track the details, but like the thing that was so magical about this whole thing was that we would have this rip roaring, super hot, see the face of God polarity in sex. And then she would cry and we would turn into mom and dad. And no joke, within 30 minutes, there was zero polarity. We're completely turned off to each other because we are now in mom and dad mode. And like she's over there, saying she doesn't want to eat what I made for breakfast and she's throwing it on the floor and I'm getting frustrated and Justin's going, this is not fun at all. And because we had just had that moment with each other, we would just let the polarity fall out of the bottom of the floor for the rest of the day. And we both just think tomorrow morning. And it became no big deal during that time of her life where she was the ultimate, like, hitching the giddy up, you know what I mean? Where she was learning how to be a human and just like having hard days and like not wanting to put her, sunscreen on, and whatever, like normal kid stuff. We had so much more room for her to be terrible twos and this and that because we had this rip roaring connection every morning. And then we didn't need it to be around. I mean, once you become an expert of polarity, you're not afraid when there's no polarity.
Because you can bring it back.
You can bring it back. And it's not so elusive like a unicorn. It's like something that you can intentionally create together when it's appropriate. Right. And then if life is kind of moving you in the other direction, you can accept life on life's terms. And I think kids are much easier when you aren't worried that it's destroying your marriage.
Yeah.
So many
that. And I
moms.
think I got a lot of from what you just said. And the first one I really felt is I think there's a higher bar for intimacy as a mom. There's almost a higher bar for everything because you have less time, less energy, less effort. So it's like, if I'm going to devote energy and time and myself in this, it needs to have rewards for me, for my family, for my kids.
Goosebumps. Yes.
Yeah. So if your sex is kind of mediocre or boring or junk foody, of course you're not going to feel like doing it because you have limited resources.
Check the box. Yeah. How many women start to have check the box sex? Do it for him.
Go down on him so he gets off. Like that isn't going to feel good.
Or like want to have sex, just prove yourself your marriage is okay. Like that's not going to feel good either.
No. And so it's like the bar is higher. And I love that because then becoming parents can also be an initiation for deeper intimacy if you take it that way. Right? It can be like an invite to, do you want to be more deliberate and conscious and deepen this aspect so it feels more rewarding for both of you? Yeah. And James and we've had great intimacy after baby. like amazing intimacy. Even from the beginning, it's been crazy. But I think a big part of it was setting up time for love dates. Because if I had just waited to feel in the mood, or like we both were suddenly in the mood and present, it would not happen. It's like waiting for a unicorn to fall from the sky. Like there was just not going to be a moment. But having like
Definitely not.
love dates where I know, okay, I can show up as I am and trust that like together we will find the turn on, and the arousal made all the difference.
So true and
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
And as you said, natural childbirth does not end things sexually.
No,
It
I
doesn't.
think
It's
I was
freaking
like,
amazing.
it's crazy. I've never felt so much appreciation for my body and my pussy. And I think there's so much weird. Oop, oh no.
I just lost you. Oh, you're back.
Oh yeah, there we are. I think there's so much weird narratives of like your body's gonna be wrecked after giving birth, or like your pussy's gonna be stretched out. It grosses me out to even say that because it's so untrue. There's so much, I
Not
found so much
true.
joy and vitality in my body. I love my body more now than I did before I had a baby.
Me too. Me too. Oh, like 100%.
Yeah. Wow. Well, there's so much more I want to explore, but I feel like this was a really amazing meal for people to dive into and to get some nuggets. And I'm really thinking of all the parents out there who might listen to this episode and hopefully get like a little juice for yourself and for your intimacy. Yeah.
And then the only other thing is, I mentioned like having him help you is such an important piece.
Yeah.
And, some women might be like, but I'm the one watching this podcast and he's not. Like, how do I get him to help me
Great question.
Right. Yeah. Cause I don't want to leave people hanging with that one,
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean this as a plug for our book, but I really want to say this book is written for men too. And it has in the back, it has guided practices written out that you could literally, he would just go, oh, okay, this is how we do that. And then he takes you guys through these practices. So what I would recommend, if that was something that super inspired you and you're like, how do I get him on board? Like, just leave this book around for him. And like Justin's goal in writing this book for men was to make intimacy interesting to men. Because as you and I both know, they're just not as interested in intimacy work as women are. Women tend to be the love-driven beings, and like everything relationship is. And often if you're with somebody who is polarizing that, they're going to be a purpose-driven being. And they're going to be reading about, stock trading or whatever, instead of intimacy. So we tried to write this book to be super concise, right to the point that a man, because it was hard for women to get men to read the Awakened Woman's Guide to Everlasting.
True. Not really written for men necessarily.
No, we wrote it for women, but so many women were like, I want to start doing this. And like, what am I going to ask him to read that book? You know what I mean? So
yeah, I love that. And I think it's such a gift that you have the practices outlined there. They've been really powerful in our marriage that I see, I feel, that I want. And we share them with our clients as well. And so, yeah, highly recommend. And I think the book is written in a nice balance of masculine and feminine. Like it is very clear and very structured and to the point. And so I think it would satisfy kind of the masculine brain or the alpha brain. And then, but I love the stories. My favorite part of your stories and hearing about your love dates or your formal practice together and how juicy it is and how you move through moments is hard or sticky. Yeah. It's great that the book has both.
And one of the reasons why we structured it where you could very much see the difference between like the teaching piece and like a story was so that if your man isn't all interested in my stories, he could just skip over that chapter and go to the next point.
So I'm like, I want a whole book of your stories. Can you just tell it like right after every love date and then I'll read all your stories?
That would be amazing. I would love to do
It
that
would.
actually.
I'd love to read it.
Because honestly, we don't have the same. I know you know this from your practice because I've witnessed your practice. Like there are no two love dates that are the same. True.
So true.
Isn't
So
it
true.
always? Couldn't it always be like book worthy? And you're
Yeah,
just like, yeah,
exactly.
that could be really cool.
It
That
would
could
be
be way
fun.
cool.
Sometimes I write after our love dates and I love having it like, because every time it's so different. There's new things that come up, new
Ah.
things we've never done. And yeah, it's
And
amazing. When
also
people are
like
like,
new things you've never faced before and like the
yeah,
unearthing and it's a big deal.
it's big.
It's
Yeah.
big, yeah.
Wow. Well, there's so much in this, but I'd love to leave our listeners with like, what's one question we might want them to mull on when it comes to intimacy and motherhood?
Hmm. Grant me another drop in if you don't mind. Is that
Yes,
okay?
no worries.
Okay.
Yeah, of course. These big questions.
Like, no big deal. Just what's one question? The one question. Oh my God. Let me think.
That
Okay, hold on.
encapsulates them all.
Okay,
Just something for their brains to chew on.
okay. I think the best question that just keeps coming here for this is it can make motherhood so inspiring. And like I said, you really experience freedom in motherhood when you choose the sadhana aspect, like when you're in choice around that your child is going to be your guru and they're going to show you the things you didn't know you should work on, right? Getting into choice around that. And so all of that relates to the question, which is, I think the best question you could ask is, what kind of love would I like this being to experience that I never got?
Mm. Love that question.
What kind of love would I like this being to experience that I never got?
Mm. Love
And
that.
it gives you such strong purpose in showing up.
Mm.
And when you're in purpose, you'd be in purpose and love. You'd be fully fulfilled in alpha and omega in every moment of parenting in that moment. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because
Yes. And you can
otherwise,
feel how much it matters, your love.
yes. And also in parenting, one thing people don't realize they suffer so much in parenting is like maybe their omega side in that moment is being very fulfilled, but their alpha is like starving, or their alpha is being fulfilled, but their omega is starving.
Mm.
And when you imagine that question, you're fulfilling alpha and omega experience parenting as an inner marriage of alpha and omega totally being like wildly fulfilled. That's the kind of moments where parenting is regenerating, like filling your cup to spill over versus depleting it.
Beautiful. Wow. Well, I'm going to take that question myself and journal on it today. And I can't wait to see what comes up. It's already, there's some seeds percolating and things I've been thinking about. But I love the integration of the love and the purpose inside that question.
Are we out of time for me to just hear one of the seeds? I would love to hear.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, so one of the seeds I was already mentioning is like loving, like being with her feelings, and that's really important to me to change that loop. And then another one is around, I think as a kid, I often felt like I was fitting into the adults' schedule and they were really busy and I was like being taken along with their schedule. But what I really craved is like someone to drop down with me and be curious about my world and to want to know how I see things. Um, and so that's something I really work hard to bring to Lila, is like, I slow myself down and I'm like, what is she noticing? And like, oh, it's the texture on the basket. Oh, wow. And like really being absorbed in it with her so that so that she knows that her world is important and interesting and valuable. And she doesn't just have to fit into the adult's world. And I also get a lot from it. I feel like I see the world with totally fresh eyes. It's like, oh my gosh, this basket or this ant, and just get fascinated by the world all over again when I slow down and with her in it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was beautiful to hear. Really. Yeah. When you say these kinds of things, it really reminds moms, like other moms, like your statement just then, just really reminds moms what's so fun about motherhood and how to land yourself in motherhood. And I think so often in our culture, moms sympathize with each other in the hardship, which is important. And we need all of our moms and sympathizing in the hardship, but we don't often learn from the joys either. Like sometimes we sympathize in the hardships, but we don't often get the like contagion of the joy. And you just gave me the contagion of the joy. Like I just could envision myself tomorrow, like just putting myself in her body as she does something and just like going there, sounds great. I'm going to totally do it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I got goosebumps when you were talking about the contagion of the joy of motherhood. And that's something I would love to bring, because I've almost felt, I don't know if you've ever felt like this, like it's almost more socially acceptable or something to be like, oh, I'm so sleep deprived, or oh, it's so hard, versus I love being a mom. Like my heart feels so full and I love her, and the joy I feel in it sometimes feels even harder to share for me.
100%. 100%. But you just gifted me so big time. Like I'm just you and I are in like opposite sides of the world. So she's asleep right now, but I have plans for tomorrow.
Oh, so cool. Wow. Well, Londin, that was such a fun episode. I also love any listeners, you can't see us, but Londin and I showed up today in the exact same top in different colors, but it's this like little lacy bralette. I'm wearing red, she's wearing blue. And I just think that is so cool that we showed up in matching tops. So even though we're separated by an entire world, we're on other sides of the earth, there's still something so strong connecting us.
That was amazing. We had like a good 10-minute hardcore laugh when we turned our cameras on.
Totally. It was amazing. Well, thank you so much, Londin. Wow, another incredible episode.
Super
I'm just
fun.
So excited for people to get this. And if you're listening, feel free to let me know on Instagram what you got from this. Leave us a review too if you found it useful. And definitely check out Londin's books and her work. She also leads monthly women's circles and monthly couples calls on Patreon that are amazing. So I'll make sure you have the link to that in the show notes.
Okay.
And thank you so much, Londin.
Oh, so my pleasure. Enjoy your day.
You too.